Welcome back to episode 3 of AGI and the Humans in the Loop, or AI and the Humans in the Loop, where we're talking about the new workforce and the new way of working. And I have a guest today who I've known for quite some time. He's definitely a vibe coder extraordinaire, Harrison Painter. Harrison, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into what this is starting to look like.
Yeah, so founder of LaunchReady.ai. We focus on training, consulting, and actually we have a lab where we build products that we ship. So we kind of walk the walk, talk the talk, and put things out there. Been in this space for 4 years, a little over 4 years now. Well, really since ChatGPT was released in 2020, November of
November 30th,
2022 now.
2022.
That's crazy, right? So it's already
Yeah.
been 4 years. And I know we're going to talk about this and just the evolution of where we were 4 years ago and not everybody else. I'm saying where you and I were 4 years ago and where we are now. And I think it would shock people who are just watching the news or listening to friends or, not fully in the know of how much smarter this can really make somebody.
Yeah, man, I would totally agree. And I would say there have been some monumental times along the way. I think the ChatGPT image generator that made the Studio Ghibli really kind of brought ChatGPT into everybody's life for a minute. I think that Nano Banana's launch, image generation again, was a really big deal. Um, but it was really around November of last year when Claude Opus 4.5, I think, came out, and that was when things changed for me. I mean, I played with things like Lovable. This term vibe coding, I think Karpathy is the one that phrased that about 6 months prior to that, and I think I spent one day inside Replit for like an exorbitant number of hours and went, okay, this is like fun, but there's no way that I could ever monetize this, or I can't get this good enough to make this worth my time. And then all of a sudden, November last year hits, and now it's a brave new world.
It is. I was deep into the N8N world, which I believe was very similar to Replit, right? And like you, I was like, I get it, but this is for people smarter than me. Like you really need to understand the workflow, how these things connect. And I'm trying to learn it, but it felt above my comprehension level for tech at that point. Um, but if you remember too, it was going into the holiday season
Mhm.
of 2025. Everything was agentic AI was being talked about,
Yep.
but it wasn't really a reality yet, at least not for the general people like us, right? And then all of a sudden we come out of the holidays in January and bam, agentic's here. But now we don't need N8N anymore. Now we don't need Replit anymore. We can actually start using these agents and have it do things on our behalf. And what a crazy concept that was.
Yeah, and I missed one, which was DeepSeek about a year before that. Right, was the first time we saw a reasoning model that was not real expensive and that was really really good. And then I think what you're talking about in January 2026 is when OpenClaw hit the market. And I know you dove into OpenClaw. I was still a little skeptical of open source. I waited another month before I really started looking at it. But talk about what it was like to experience OpenClaw and how that whole paradigm shift just changed the way you work.
Well, at first scary because again, look, I'm not a technical background person, not a CTO, CIO, like any of those type of people. So all of a sudden you're setting up this, what I thought at the time was a complicated system, and you're allowing it to do things for you. So of course, my first instinct, I go online, I start seeing things. Oh, it stole somebody's bank account. It hijacked this. It did that. Now, did some of that happen? Maybe, but it was sensationalized to a huge degree, right? But I don't know how to deal with this safely. I don't know what things like permissions, guardrails, like all these concepts I knew about, but not in a technical sense. So I know I'm winging it by the seat of my pants. So I'm doing everything in my power to use it, but protect myself at the same time. So the experience was not fun. for me, other than this glimpse into the future that we had. But then once Claude brought theirs to the market, that's when everything changed because you kind of knew. I don't want to say it was safer, but you kind of had a safer feeling. I'll say that, right?
Yeah, no, I've always agreed. So back going back, go way back to like 2023 when in 2024 when these models were first out, and while I was working in healthcare, like we stayed in Copilot, even though Microsoft Copilot pretty much sucked back then. You knew if there was a HIPAA violation and your company got sued, at least Microsoft had a reputation to protect and was in the black, right? And then as time
Yes.
progressed, I think at the beginning of this year Anthropic had established itself as fairly trustworthy and fairly safety prone company, and ChatGPT was still kind of in that we want to be the consumer product. Sora came out; they were still trying to figure out, but Anthropic was starting to get all these enterprise clients and starting to show how you could actually automate workflows in a business and do so at least semi safely without deleting your whole database. And I think you're right. That was when I really started to get into it. And then at some point in time, after getting an Obsidian vault for a wiki, and like it's amazing this was 7 months ago. Like the amount of technology and understanding that you and I have of that ecosystem just 7 months later, I think, as you always say, is proof that this stuff doesn't make you stupid. Like, I damn near have like an MBA in LLMs now, and that's all self learned through these models. But when I kept hearing about Codex, because I listen to a lot of podcasts, think you do too. You have a great podcast, right? And I kept hearing like Codex, Codex, Codex. And at the time, I kind of put Sam Altman and Zuckerberg in the same frame. Like I don't trust either of these guys. Like I'm not sure that they're just trying to commercialize things so they can sell ads. And I was like, okay, fine, let me try Codex. And then I was like, oh shit, this is easier to use and more effective than Cowork or Claude Code. I hadn't gotten into the command line to the terminal yet, but I don't know. What was your experience like moving from something like Cowork into the terminal, and how do those two foundation model companies compare to you?
Well, I use Terminal a little bit, only when I'm kind of guided to use Terminal. Because again, I don't come from a tech background, right? So Terminal's scary, right, to somebody like me. What can I do to my computer here? But I ended up using VS Code, which is just, I don't know how you explain it, but it's kind of it's not as scary as Terminal, but not as easy to use as what we have now with the Claude app and the ChatGPT app. So it's kind of in the middle between the two. And I went that route too because I want to be a little more technical, right? So I want to understand things a little bit more, file structure and all those things. But yet I don't want to be in a terminal where I have no clue what I'm doing whatsoever, right? You got to put something in to move everything around all the time. So it's just kind of a different experience. But as I learned how to build an agent, learn how to use it, learned the permissions, learned what you could get away with, what you shouldn't get away with. And it's funny you brought up Obsidian, is we kind of make fun of this now in inner circles, but I mean, this is what the brain looks like if people can see that
Yeah.
through the system, right? And now I've got it all color coded and all that kind of thing. I didn't have that 7 months ago, like you said. But then Cowork came out and these apps, and I realized what they were doing. They were trying to make it more accessible to the general public, to the small business owner that's way too busy to learn new technology, right? They've got staff, they've got jobs, they've got clients, they've got everything they need to do. The last thing they want to do is learn a whole new system. So at least within Cowork and these apps, they're trying to make it as simple as possible. Just plug your stuff in, ask it questions. Now we just saw the other day, memory is starting to be persistent across the browser, across the app, across your phone. So here pretty soon it's going to carry over everywhere. So a small business owner doesn't need to be an AI expert like we are to keep up with everything. But to answer your question on the change of what's happened, it was very hard at first. It got a little bit easier, a little bit easier. Then it gets a little bit harder again because things change, models change, prompts that you had before don't work anymore. Then you enter worlds of loop design, graph design, right? You start learning about all these new terms to improve everything. And then you make it better again. And then guess what happens? They change models, make some updates, things start to break again, and you're back to square one. But it still gets easier at each level. I'll just say that it does get easier at each level.
Yeah, and let's get into it a little bit. So I'll share like how I have had the models teach me how to do things. One of the things that I listen, I've learned I'm an audio learner. So I listen to a lot of podcasts and I listen to everything from Hard Fork, which is super left leaning technology podcast, to All In, which is super right leaning, to NVIDIA's podcast, which is more developer related and I don't understand them half the time, to the Big Technology podcast. It's a little bit more like I'll listen to all this, and once in a while I'll hear a reoccurring conversation, right? Like when Karpathy put out Hermes, which was kind of a safer version of OpenClaw. And when I hear enough of that, what I will do is I will go and I'll do some research on that topic. And he happened to have a GitHub repository of the Hermes agents, scaffolding and everything else, skills and everything else, right? And then I will take all of that to Claude and say, hey, what would it look like to bring this to life in our system and to start using this? And if it's a good idea, tell me. If it's a bad idea, tell me what your pushback is. And if it ends up being a good idea, then I say, okay, walk me through how we build this into what we're currently doing. How do
Yeah.
you lean into new things?
So it's great you brought up the Karpathy thing, because I did the same thing. So look, he's a very well respected person. He's not a scammer. He's not one of those hyper people. So we know that if something's out there with his name on it, we need to take it seriously and look at it. So like you, I pulled it in, and here's what made me feel good. I do the same thing. Anything we can learn from this and apply to our system to make it better. Right, it goes through it all. And it made me feel so good. It said, look, most of this stuff we've already built. We're already doing that. We're already doing that. We're already doing that. You already worked on this. But then it'll say, but here's the 3 things that we haven't done that we want to take a look at. And here's the 4 things that really don't matter for our goals or what we're trying to accomplish. And then I'll look at those 3 and I'll just go, all right, well, let's implement those 3.
Yeah.
Right. And then it just kind of puts it in. Now, the deeper I go down the rabbit holes, the more sophisticated the systems I'm building get. It's a little bit more complex than that, but that's where we all start. And the thing is, if you thirst for knowledge, it goes from what can we take from this, just do it, to what can we take from this, why, and if we implement it, how does it change everything? And then
Right.
you start getting all the information. You're like, oh, that sounds good. That sounds good. And then you start over time, and I'm sure you have all these habits now too. What are the negative effects of us
Uh-huh.
adding this to our system? What's the opportunity cost if we don't? Like, these are the questions that I never would have asked 6 months ago, a year ago, that are now pretty much mandatory in everything that I do within the system. So just building those habits so I learn and I'm not just passing it off for the machine to do everything.
Well, and that brings up the real reason I started this podcast is let's go back again to I've had the Schools Out podcast for quite a while, and I've had a lot of Purdue students on there who are software people, so who are worried. You know, they're going in to be developers, and now they're hearing that they're not going to get hired when they get out. And so initially, my advice to them was, well, look, like you're probably right. You're probably not going to get hired by Salesforce or by Eli Lilly or by any of these gigantic companies that have you're envisioning yourself joining a developer team of a big enterprise company. And right now, anyways, that is kind of frozen because they're playing with can AI software replace entry level employees? But there are a million small to medium sized businesses out there that maybe, if they're lucky, had a part time IT guy who was there to do passwords and access to stuff and keep up your cybersecurity slightly and maintain any hardware that they might have had. Like these companies need these junior level software engineers like nobody's business. And I've now shifted to think that's not only true, but there is this kind of new, I like to call them LLM whispers, right? There's this new class of people who may not come with a development background, but they've really dove deep into this technology. They've come at it with a beginner's mindset. In an expert's mind, everything is finite. In a beginner's mind, the possibilities are unlimited. So they've come at it and they've begun to understand the theory of mind, of how these agentic workflows and these models work together, what's meant by all this language around tokenomics and inference and all this. And like, if you can bring on somebody like that in your company, then you may only need the super technical, expensive people occasionally when you're trying to scale something or make it super secure.
Well, I got two things on that. So the first one, look, if I was just getting out of college right now and the job market is terrible for those folks, the first thing I would do to make money is go look for those small companies in your local neighborhood that have really terrible websites, but pretty good Google reviews or Yelp reviews or wherever they have their reviews. And just figure out it's super easy now to build a website using something like Claude Design and Codex and all that, and just go offer to make one for $1,000 or $500 or whatever your time is worth to you. As a brand new person, every dollar is important, and you're getting paid to learn. You're building something of value for the other person. Look, I could do 100 of those websites, but it's just at this stage, it's not worth my time. Like I'd want to do a $5,000 website, $10,000 website, but they really at this point they need a website you could just throw together for $1,000, and it'll be 1,000 times better than what they have. So you can fund yourself for a period of time like that, and then learn what I talk about in my book and the 7 levels of AI proficiency. The goal is to become a level 6 or 7. And what that really means is becoming an AI orchestrator. So how can you orchestrate 15 AI agents that are working on a project for you? Now, that's kind of scary because look, I worked for a long time with just one agent named Barnabas. And then all of a sudden, Barnabas is hiring other agents or bringing in swarms of agents you start seeing, right? And you're trying to figure out what's going on. Then you learn you can start creating multiple agents that work together. But my point with that is when I have them on a vibe coding project, when the code's done, I don't know the difference between clean code and dirty code. I just know it works and it works right now. But it might work with me on it. It might work with 10 of us on it. Is it going to work with 100 or 1,000 of us on it? Only somebody with real coding experience knows that. So you still have the value. All we're really doing out here, everybody thinks we're cracking codes and we're building a lot of MVPs that used to cost 100 grand. We're able to build an MVP now for a $200, a pro account or max account or whatever. Leverage that time. Go make websites for people. Learn how to manage the agentic system. You'll become an orchestrator. And trust me, within a year or two, you're going to become one of the most valuable humans on planet Earth.
Yeah, I do not disagree at all. I think that if you write code and you're going to be 10x value, but even if you just understand how to make those MVPs, you're of super high value, particularly if you understand the business. So that the flip side of that is guys like you and me who've been around for a while, worked in a whole bunch of different industries. We may not know how to write code, but we understand how to architect this stuff and we understand the business problems of a lot of different industries and where it's very different. We were talking about this earlier today. Regulated industries have a lot higher need and a lot lower pain tolerance for automating things than unregulated industries, right? That you much quicker you have to bring in a software engineer or maybe even a data engineer to make sure that everything is secure so you don't get sued out of existence because you violated a regulation. Whereas your mom and pop HVAC company, like someone like you or me could go in and revamp their entire system and save them tons of money, put out twice the marketing that they're already putting out and without a higher expense, redo their website, all those things. And I think there's plenty of work for everyone. But I do think that we need to start having more of a conversation around what does that look like for small to medium sized businesses, not just what does it look like at an enterprise level.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, huh. Let's just think about what we just talked about, how much the world has changed since January.
Yeah.
Right now, as we're recording this, it's what, middle of August. So we're only talking 8 months the world for Jason and I has completely changed from where we were 8 months ago.
Yeah.
That's going to happen more. It's going to happen faster. And even if you right now watching this, listening to this, if it hasn't impacted you yet, it will. And I just don't want you to wake up one day and go, holy crap, what happened? What happened? Right?
I
So you've
agree.
got to
And can
watch
I say one
podcasts.
thing in there, Harrison? And I don't want to go down the like negative rabbit hole, but there have been a couple of things that have happened recently that are concerning. The jailbreak and traces of messages on a message board to tell other agents how to break out of jail. That combined with developing a novel virus that, like I Am Legend, I thought taught us we shouldn't do that, even if it was just to attack bacteria. Like, if you're hearing that kind of stuff in the news and you don't even understand at a base level what's going on in artificial intelligence, then I feel like you're kind of out on an island and like maybe feeling sorry for yourself or scared, but you don't have enough information to make informed decisions of like what's hype and what should we actually be having a conversation about at a community and a state level.
Yeah, and to your point of the one that escaped and all that, I mean, these are experiments that are happening in labs with models that we don't have access to,
Right.
things like that. So when you see that fear-based kind of stuff going out there, you've got to take it with a grain of salt. You know, some of it is very sensationalized. Now, I'm not saying there's not issues that we need to be aware of, be looking at, and make sure that we're understanding in some way. But you just can't let that amount of fear out there stop you from learning the tool itself, because it's already in almost everything that we do. Even if you don't realize it, when you're on Netflix, when you're on Amazon, AI is being used somewhere in that process. When you're Google searching now, you'll notice AI mode is at the top and it's impacting you, whether that's positive or negative. So it's in every aspect of your life already, even if you don't realize it. So I'm with Jason. Like, we focus on the positive sides of it and we just keep our eye on the negative side just to make sure that, yeah, we don't want to put a blind eye to it, but we also can't let it dictate where we're going with everything.
You can't be ignorant, right? Like I hear people in the K through 12 space. I hear people say, like K through 6 should not have AI tools. I'm not saying they shouldn't have AI tools, but if you don't start educating K through 6 as to what's going on under the hood at an age appropriate level, then when Mr. Potato Head or Megatron is talking to your 6-year-old the exact same way with the exact same cadence and language that their friends and their parents are, it's going to confuse the hell out of them. So we can't just turn a blind eye to the developments. There has to be like this base level of understanding that I would encourage everyone to like at least know what's going on in the world of AI. And you'll have even more fun if you lean into knowing what's going on by starting to explore the tools.
And I want to address that. So, look, I get the fear when it comes to young people. But think about when you were young, the 2-year-old. What was one of the most annoying things about a 2-year-old? Why? Why?
Well,
Why?
why? Yeah.
Why? Right?
Yeah.
That carries on a lot of questions when they're 3, when they're 4, when they're 5. Somewhere along the way, we kind of stop asking questions. I don't know exactly scientifically where that is, but typically it's at a level where you're told to shut up, you're told to sit down, you're told, like, the world just kind of starts coming down on you, and then you get in a point where you're scared to ask a question, you're afraid of looking stupid and all that. AI can take all that away because it's crushed critical thinking. If you've got a 6-year-old sitting there asking AI why, and it's actually able to give the right answers, that kid is learning. And it's learning at a pace that's not annoying mom and dad. It's not disrupting a class. Because again, it goes back to Jason and I would not call us the sharpest tools in the shed, especially when it comes to development and things, right? But I find myself working with 5 types of memory: working memory, episodic memory, semantic memory, procedural memory, perspective memory. I would have never done that a year ago. I would have never studied how the brain remembers things a year ago. but I'm trying to understand how a brain works and then how AI's memory system works to make it better. Ask more questions. Those young people are at that ripe age where they're not afraid to ask questions, and we need to just be feeding that. Now, the argument will be who trained the system. I get those things, but
We do need
that's not
vertical
the
AI for
argument.
kids, right? We need
It's
vertical AI for kids. I don't think we made vertical AI or purpose-driven AI for education, like Magic School. Somebody's going to make some purpose-driven AI that has the right guardrails for kids. But what you said just resonated with something with me because I do a lot of listening and studying as to what the issues are with high school level AI, and the kids don't know the right questions to ask. Like that's the biggest holdback to them getting maximum value out of the tool is they're like, well, I don't know what to ask it to do, right? And so I think what you're saying is you could almost create a flywheel effect if you started when they're young, let them ask these things questions, let them grow in their answers and their knowledge without, and that's not saying you should disconnect as a parent and not answer questions, but every parent who's realistic with himself knows that why and mom, like they get annoying after at certain points in time. So let the AI start, and maybe as those kids grow, they won't stop asking questions. They'll continue to ask questions, and then we won't have a generation of high schoolers who don't know what to ask AI. They'll be coming up with novel questions to create novel answers and solutions.
Well, let's look at how broken the education system is. And this is not the teacher's fault. I'm blaming the system. The teachers are in a system where they can't win right now, right? But if I'm a student, I'm in this system where it's a standardized test, and I'm really being trained to memorize some things to pass a test to meet a standard. Now, does that feed my passion? Does that feed the things that excite me at school? Or am I looking at this as just a task that I have to get done and get through so I can go to college, so I can go find a job? So you can see it's kind of this terrible. But now if I'm sitting there going, what are you passionate about? What is it that excites you? History? Well, we can recreate history with Seed Dance 2.5 now. We can create, well, and soon, for much cheaper, hopefully, we can recreate a movie based on the War of 1812, or you can create a fictitious story of that time period, but how can you apply real history into it? So there's so many different things now that people can learn, but we don't feed into those passions anymore in the education system. So guess what? The kids aren't asking questions. They're not trained to ask, they're trained to answer. And they're trained to answer through memorization more than they are critical thinking. And that's why the kids are using it to cheat because I don't like doing it anyway. I want a shortcut. But I promise you, because we've ran the AI Protege program with high school students, and when you feed them things they're passionate about, when you let them kind of have that freedom to create and work on their own, all of a sudden they're thriving and they're learning and they're asking those questions. And it's a much better environment to be in.
What an interesting experiment that would be. You're making me think of The Man in the High Castle. Did you see that?
Mm-mm,
That was a
no.
series on Netflix or one of them where it was Nazi Germany had won World War II. It was kind of futuristic and past. I think there was some time travel involved, but it was the world if the Japanese and Germans had won World War II. San Francisco was occupied by Japan. The East Coast was occupied by Germany, and it was like just imagine having a history class and being able to take all these points in history and generate film to play out. What if we hadn't dropped the bomb on Hiroshima? Or what if the French and Indian War? What if the Native Americans would have all bound together and held on to North America? Like, what would the world look like today? That would be so much more of an interesting and imagination inspiring way to look at history in a history class than just reading the same story that we've all been told. And now we hear like, well, we hear about the atrocities of Hitler, and not to take away from those, but if you were to go over in a different nation, you might hear about the same atrocities that we imparted on the Native American people from a different lens. So rather than just arguing over the historical lens, let's explore history through the lens of what ifs.
What ifs? Yeah. And think how exciting and how fun
Yeah.
that would be as a class, right? You're feeding into creativity, you're feeding into storytelling, you're feeding into history. Like there's just so many creative writing could come into play. Just think of the amount of skills other than right now I'm just sitting there and what year did the War of 1812 happen? Check, check,
Uh-huh.
check. Nobody's thriving in that system emotionally, right? It's
Well,
just not happening.
and by proxy, because you would be trying to play out these things, people would learn what actually happened because they would have to, in order to debate whether or not the other outcome was better or worse, they would really have to know what the real outcome was. So you would learn what you were supposed to learn, but you would have a hell of a time and your imagination would be sparked and you would have that debate going on and people engaging in conversation, which is another problem that we seem to have with kids not being able to converse with each other. Yeah, I love that idea. I don't think we're reimagining education with these tools the way that we should be.
Yeah, and even when it comes to something like math, look, I don't know the science behind it, but I know there's some people that are just gifted.
Yeah.
They have a mathematical mind, they have a scientific mind. I don't think AI is going to hurt those people because they have a gift typically or a passion that leads them down that path and they're just going to learn that stuff, right? But let's just say that I want to know more, even though I was one that always struggled with math. I always struggled with things like biology and all that. But you know what? If I would have, because it's a textbook, I'm reading stuff,
Yep.
maybe I saw a movie, but right now, if I took biology 101 and I had AI, oh my gosh, I can go deep and I can understand. And I can go, you know what? I don't understand this instructor. I remember going to college. You know, you always had that instructor. Maybe they were from India and you couldn't quite understand them. Or you had the instructor that was really boring and monotone or whatever that was. And or you just didn't bond with the person. Well, now I can go in AI and say, look, I don't understand. Can you teach me like I'm in eighth grade or fifth grade or ninth grade or whatever that needs to be for you? And then slowly. So now eventually when I go back to class, maybe I can keep up. Maybe I can understand or whatever. And because a big chunk of where I got lost in high school and college was once I got behind, it felt impossible
Mhm.
to keep up. Now there's a mountain in front of me to overcome just to be at the starting line again. AI takes away that problem for people like me because I'm a visual learner. I ask a lot of questions. AI meets me where I'm at. And I think there's a lot of people out there just like me.
I think you're right, and I think that brings it full circle back to the workforce because I've actually seen this in the workforce. I've seen a charismatic, very intelligent leader who speaks at a level that a lot of their employees don't understand, and the ability to take transcripts from those meetings and translate it into notes that each individual understands and resonates with is so powerful, right? So, what was he actually asking of me? He used too many big words, or the way I had a guy that I worked for that just loved like leadership books. So whatever leadership book he had just read was like the leadership methodology we were following for the moment, and we were following all the terminology of it. And I could take his talks and be like, okay, D book this and just like give the bullet points that I can send out to people of what it is he actually wants as a deliverable from them in a language that they'll understand. And they found that so valuable. It's not just in education. This happens amongst human beings. And I would say to him, like, look, dude, you're so vague when you tell me to do stuff. I've seen you this is when prompt engineering was big, right? Like I've seen you use AI and give a very detailed prompt as to what the role was, what the expectations was, what good enough looks like. Talk to human beings the same way you prompt AI and you'll get a hell of a lot better rather than read my mind. Here's what I want you to go do.
Well, I do two things that I think are massively valuable for people. So, one, I run what I call a signal brief before I meet with people. Basically, it goes online, it scrapes everything about them, it creates a DISC profile, it creates an emotional intelligence assessment, and it allows me to meet them where they're at. If they're a creative, an engineer, if they're all business, if they like small talk, like all those different things, right? Then we're in a world now where most of these get recorded. So now I can go into my agent called Barnabas, and I can say, hey, can you break down this conversation? Where did I do well? Where did I lose them? Where did I not listen? Where did I interrupt? So I can improve. So now take that into the classroom, right? Have kids interact, score that communication, help guide them in how to be respectful, how to have debate, how to have good conversation, how to work as a team, right? Not just one on one, but as a group of 5 or 6, because we all have these plaids now and all those type of things. And we can literally improve everything about our lives now.
Yeah, you're going to get the pushback of, well, it's just going to cause more picking on the kids who aren't performing well and pointing things out. And I think the one thing I would say to that is we're still looking at this like a lamp that wherever we move it around, it shines a light on something rather than the electricity that's running through the classroom now. Like, okay. So let's explore AI bias as a conversation in the middle of all that. But while we're doing it, let's talk about human bias because AI is not the only thing that has bias. Like, so you can actually start to fold what the future of working alongside artificial intelligence is going to look like into leveraging these tools and pointing out their strengths and weaknesses alongside the strengths and weaknesses of humans.
And see, here's where I'd push back on any teacher on that one. Those kids are getting picked on anyway. It's the same thing as we've banned AI at my company. They're all using it, CEO. Like, I hate to tell you, those kids are still getting bullied, whether you have swept it under the carpet or not. What AI does is actually help kind of level the playing field for everybody. Because if I've learned anything about AI, it amplifies my strengths and it fills in the gaps of my weaknesses. I have social anxiety disorder. So for me to go in front of 30 people, 100 people, 10 people is not easy. And it never has been for me. But you know how much easier it is now because I am so prepared before I walk into any room now because I have Barnabas, my AI agent. I have research that I can do. I can have it sit there and walk me through a topic again, like I'm in 8th grade, and then slowly take it from 8th grade to 10th grade to freshman in college, all the way to, PhD and beyond. And I can become a quasi expert, at least in almost anything that I'm talking about. That brings confidence. Why are most kids getting picked on, or why do they have some issues? Typically, it's anxiety,
Yeah.
right? It's fear. I don't want to look stupid. Well, let's equip them with something that takes that away,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's at least how I see it.
No, I agree. It allows that. It allows different approaches. I would say the same for myself. Like I'm a debater on the Myers Briggs. I have a tendency to unpack something by debating it and trying to pick apart what's wrong, and then I will quickly come up with what I think is the right way to do things. AI has taught me to stop and go, what am I not thinking about? What am I not asking? And that is not in my nature, right? But this goes back to kind of that move 37, and sometimes it's entertainment that brings me around. Like, but when I watch Lisa Dahl playing AlphaGo and the fact that the computer thinks about things in ways completely differently to the way humans do, and if you're not asking it what its opinion is or what approach it would take without presuming that you know what the right way to do things, then you're missing a whole lot. And that's bled into my relationships with human beings in the sense that I don't always, and this is subconscious a lot of times, right? But I don't always think all of a sudden, all right, I have a right answer, or somebody who has a loud voice has the right answer. I want to hear what everybody in the room has to say because you never know where you're going to turn over the right answer.
Absolutely.
Now I'm going to cough.
Yeah, I just, it all comes down to a lack of education and a lack of understanding of what the tools are and what they can do. Because everybody that comes in to train right now, I want to say everybody, most people come in and train on the tool. I come in and train on the person,
Yeah.
right? How do you approach a problem? When we work with a company, what's a bottleneck that you have? Let's look at the workflow that got you there and let's figure out step by step how we can fix this and make it easier for you. But what we've learned over the last couple of years, Everybody knows they have a bottleneck, but they can't tell you how they got there.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault. It's typically, look, all of us now, you don't have to be a CEO or a business owner. I mean, you could just be a stay-at-home mom, but your kids are doing 932 things, and you're trying to take care of a house or bills or whatever, and you're just bombarded all over the place with so many different things to juggle that life is just hard now.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to touch on one more thing before I let you go, because this has been a great conversation. But we've had some great conversations over in Fishers at the at Launch Fishers about maybe getting some workshops and groups together. You've started a great coffee and conversation thing on Friday mornings. Also, I want you to get into the AI Launchpad. I think if there's one thing we can learn from the Chinese, right, it's the power of network effects. If you look at how much more powerful Alibaba is than Amazon, it's because of network effect. They have really realized that the more you can bring like-minded people who have similar issues into an ecosystem where they're all communicating and collaborating with each other, you can get a movement to move much quicker than it would in small pockets and small groups, like, right? And so talk about some of the things that are kind of going on around Indiana and with the AI Launchpad digitally that people can get involved with to start talking to other like-minded people.
Yeah. So when I looked at the landscape of Indiana, we're doing a lot of amazing things, right? We've got the AI Innovation Network that's out there that's rolling. Is it INAI or AIIN through the state that like right now the big tour is going on from city
Yeah.
to city for that. So we're getting exposure as a state around AI. But then there's these subgroups that have popped up. Some of them are just trying to sell something. Some are small, all those type of things. What I saw as an opening was there's no real group that's welcoming to everybody.
Yeah.
A lot of those they're tech group meetings, right? So if I own a HVAC company, I don't really feel comfortable going to a tech event per se. So even though we're called AI and Coffee, I'm trying to create an environment where it doesn't matter if you're a student, a young person, it doesn't matter if you are a tech person, it doesn't matter if you own a plumbing company. This is a space for you to come to learn from. And we have everybody from folks that really just got their first ChatGPT account to
Yeah.
today. Well, we had a guy that's running, I think, 336 agents and, 5 Max accounts and all that. So we've got everything across the board in our community. We have the AI Launchpad, which is a digital version of that, where we have a calendar. We're doing live events, webinars. Every Thursday, we have the AI Brain Trust, which is a 90-minute, just kind of show and tell
Yeah.
conversation type scenario that's just friendly. Everybody gets a voice, everybody's heard. So I believe there needs to be a layer of kind of free training and networking and connecting,
Yeah.
because people don't know yet what they don't know. It's so new, it's moving so fast that you need a network that you can trust, led by people who have been in the space long enough to understand what's going on, and then be able to go in the right direction when you do need to purchase software or training or whatever it is that you need. But you're going to have a foundational level of understanding before you start making those investments. So that's kind of where we're sitting. And Jason and I both have a podcast, so we're really trying to push this content out. Look, you're going to pay us for implementation, so we're willing to give the information and the knowledge away for free.
Yeah, and we love bringing people to the table, and it's so interesting to see a group of people, whether it's the meetings that we have sometimes over at Danny Boys and or the AI and Coffee. Like, it's so cool to see an eclectic group of people. Like, one person's into AI and art, one person, Victor comes, he's a chemist at Lilly, and then you have another couple that she created a Harvey type AI law thing, and then you have like other people who are like Mike Jones's wife, who does everyday AI. She like takes pictures of the living room and uses Claude to design, to do what you would hire an interior designer for like thousands of dollars. She could show you how to whip up in 10 minutes on a $20 a month Claude account. Like everybody coming together and just kind of sharing their passions and their ideas. And then those subgroups and those business opportunities, they grow out of that organically, right? I think that's where you and I get along really well. Is I don't like being forced into that. I don't bring me to your event to sell me AI. Like bring me to an event to learn about what's going on in the AI landscape, get some breakout sessions, and let those business opportunities evolve organically.
Yeah, and make sure you're with people that are keeping up. I mean, a lot of the training that you see out there is outdated. It's not up to speed. You want to make sure that what we're trying to do is create a group where we can keep everybody updated, right? This is what's going on in the industry. This is what's going on with the tools. This is what's going on with the models. Here's some things to be aware of as you're using this. Here's some things to consider that's going to make your life better, right? But a space where one, you can all talk, everybody gets a voice, everybody's heard in the group. And on top of that, we're always available outside of it, right? I get questions, emails all the time that I answer for people. I had one guy that sent me his platform, and the first thing I noticed when he sent me the link, he didn't have an OG card. He didn't have a social media share card. The link was just that really ugly thing when they send it, right? So I
Yeah.
said, "Hey, you vibe coded this, right? Hey, just tell it to make a custom OG card and attach it to the website for you." And sure enough, he didn't know what an OG card was, and he definitely didn't know how to put it on. But just by asking Claude, it happened, and he sent me the link, and it was good to go. So that was pretty neat.
It's awesome.
Just
That's
little
awesome.
things like that, right?
It is, and I'm honored to be working in this space alongside you, Harrison. Let's keep in touch and let's get back together here in the near future to talk about things that evolve. Because you're right, in the last 7 months, the landscape has completely changed. So if we talk again in 2 months, I'm pretty sure that things will have changed quite a bit between now and then.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. It's going to be wild, man.
All right, I'll put all your links in the comments. Thanks for joining me today.
All right. Thanks, everybody.